When Barbara Eden saw Lena Bruce on their college campus, it was friendship at first sight.
Lena and I met freshman year. I saw her walking across the quad, and I just ran up to her and I said, "Hi, my name's Barbara. Want to be my friend?" And she kind of turned and looked, and she was like, "Do I have a choice?" And that's how our friendship started.
The new friends became best friends. But Barbara says it was a friendship that almost didn't happen. And since the highly intelligent Lena could have gone to any school she wanted,
She got into Harvard and Yale.
but Lena chose Tufts University for its renowned electrical engineering program. 4 years later, Lena Bruce is the only African-American woman to graduate with a degree in electrical engineering, and she does it with honors.
She actually got an offer at like a top engineering firm in Boston. She was like one of the few friends amongst us that already had a firm job offer coming out of school.
20-year-old Barbara and 21-year-old Lena are ready to start their post-college adventures together. Their new apartment, 694 Massachusetts Avenue.
It was like row houses, like brownstones with the rise upstairs.
But before they could fully make their new place a home, tragedy would strike. It's mid-July, and Barbara is going away for the weekend.
I left on Friday, and I remember leaving, and Lena was sitting outside in front of our building on the stairs, and so I just waved goodbye.
2 days later, Sunday evening,
I was really excited to be going back home. I came home, and I went up the stairs and dropped my stuff down, and I started saying, "Lena, Lena, I'm home."
then she goes to Lena's bedroom door. It's closed.
I knocked on the door and still calling out her name, "Lena, hi, I'm home." And then I opened the door and then I saw her. And I didn't know what I was seeing at first.
What Barbara sees is her best friend lying face down on her bed, dead. Her hands bound behind her back, naked from the waist down.
And I just remember running out of there, because I was in shock. Because I didn't know what was going on or what happened.
Outside, a frantic Barbara flags down a passing officer. Soon, the ransacked apartment is swarming with Boston police detectives.
We recovered evidence from her room and from Barbara's room that had appeared to have been tossed around. Personal items, clothing items, items we thought might be something that we could process and get information from forensically.
They also find some items outside.
Out in front of the house in that garden area, we recovered a wallet, 2 condom packages, and a bottle of baby oil.
Cops believe the killer came down the alley and saw a way to gain access.
In back of the building, there's a fire escape, and it went right up to Barbara Eden's bedroom window. Now, Barbara Eden wasn't home, but this was July. I'm assuming the windows were up, maybe just the screen was down.
Investigators take crime scene photos, then show them to a distraught Barbara.
When I showed Barbara Eden pictures of the crime scene, there were certain things that she identified that didn't belong to either one of them, like used soda cans, and a beer bottle was the item that sticks out the most for me. She and Lena didn't drink beer. There's no way that that belonged to them. Whoever had that beer bottle brought it with them from outside.
Lena Bruce's body is taken to the medical examiner's office for an autopsy.
The doctor collected fingernail clippings, vaginal swab, oral swab, anal swab, so we have that evidence from Lena herself.
The cause of death, suffocation. Lena had also been raped. Investigators canvassed the neighborhood.
They knocked on all the neighbors' doors in the building and beside, out back, the next street over. They had nothing. They had no eyewitnesses to what had taken place.
Cops start looking at those closest to Lena, and that's when they zero in on one of them.
He was the closest male to her. He was a person of interest.
Barbara Eden just found her best friend Lena Bruce murdered.
To open the door and see her, this can't be happening.
The search for her killer is on. And Boston police are taking a hard look at those closest to Lena.
Lena's boyfriend, he was the closest male to her. He was a person of interest.
I'd only seen him maybe like twice. I didn't know much about him.
Dugan says the boyfriend is brought in for questioning. He's cooperative and open with investigators, and he has an alibi for the time of the murder. Cops clear him of any wrongdoing, but detectives don't stop there.
As the net widened, more and more males were talked to.
Including former boyfriends, classmates, and co-workers at the engineering firm where Lena worked.
But it never came to anything.
No real suspects, but they do have something.
We recovered foreign DNA under her fingernails and on her vaginal swab.
But whose DNA is it? At the time, DNA technology was still being developed. Then several years later, detectives get closer to answering that important question.
They were able to develop a DNA profile of a male that was entered into the CODIS system.
But no immediate hit. And as time goes by, no hits at all. Cops, desperate to solve Lena's case, try various investigative methods, including one straight out of the movies.
The case squad sent out letters as a ruse to several of the males that they knew to have been associated with Lena. And it was, congratulations, you're about to win this great prize. If you send back your name in this, pre-stamped envelope, you'll go into a great drawer. There was no drawing. We just needed them to lick that glue strip.
Brilliant, but unfortunately all those licked envelopes lead nowhere.
And they just never were able to identify a suspect.
Nothing for years.
Once a case goes cold, the odds of solving it are pretty low.
Then almost 23 years after Lena Bruce was brutally murdered, the call everyone had been waiting for.
The crime lab called, and they told me that they had a hit on Lena Bruce.
And the person matching that DNA? A man named James Witkowski.
He wasn't even on the radar screen. His name is nowhere in the file.
James Witkowski was a petty criminal who hadn't done any jail time except recently for a fraud offense. Investigators bring the 42-year-old in for questioning. First thing they want to do is try to put Witkowski near Lena's apartment, 694 Massachusetts Avenue, around the time of the murder. Sergeant Dugan will be conducting the interview.
Are you familiar with this area here?
We used to hang out over here to drink, right on the steps.
Right on the steps.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about any murders in that area?
No.
Ever hear of any murders in that area? Anybody you know ever get murdered in that area?
No.
Anybody you know ever murder anybody in that area?
No.
Take a look at these.
Witkowski is shown a photo of Barbara and Lena.
Do you know either of these two girls?
I think I've seen them before at the park. I think I've seen her at the park.
The shorter one of the two?
Yeah.
Barbara is the shorter one.
I don't remember the other one.
If somebody was telling us that you had some sort of an association with this girl here, would that be true or false?
That would be false, because I do not know her. She's pretty, though.
Dugan gets specific.
Do you have any recollection of being in 694 Mass Ave in the apartment on the first floor? Do you know a girl named Lena Bruce? Do you ever have sex with Lena Bruce?
I said I had sex with a lot of girls, man.
Okay, I hear ya.
A lot of them, man.
I hear ya.
You know?
Never raped no chick in the houses on Mass
I
Ave.
don't know, rape nobody. Are you kidding me?
Okay.
Huh. It's gotta be with consent.
Ever get involved in any consent things where the girl was looking for something freaky?
Plenty of those.
Like what?
Plenty of those.
So, like what?
Bondage.
What do you mean bondage?
Weird, man. Some weird chicks. Bound, gagged, and
Spanking?
spanked.
Wait a minute. Bound and gagged? And who'd you bound and gagged?
Plenty of girls. Plenty of girls like that. Consensual.
Did you ever leave any of these girls still bound up and leave?
James Witkowski is talking to Boston police detectives. Cops brought him in after his DNA matched swabs taken from Lena Bruce's body more than 2 decades earlier. Witkowski is telling detectives about his sexual exploits, including tying up women. A similar MO as to the crime scene where Lena was found.
You ever leave any of these girls still bound up and leave? You did? How'd they get free?
Boy,
With your
my
boy?
Yeah, Juice.
Tell me about a couple of them.
He would set it up. We'd go over there, tie him up, bind him.
What do you mean bind
spit
them
on
up?
him. Like tie a sock around their hands, not tight, but loose enough where they can't move it. We used to do this all the time.
Sergeant William Dugan then circles back to the photo of Lena.
I already showed you this picture. I'm going to show it to you again. Do you know that woman?
Like I said, she's pretty.
There's her identification card.
I swear that's who that is, Lena Bruce. I don't know.
You've not had sex with this woman that you know.
Like I said, if I had sex with her, it was consensual.
Okay.
But I don't remember her.
But you have...
No memory of it, no confession. Cops have Witkowski's DNA found on Lena Bruce's body. But is there anything more tying him to the crime scene?
We got back to headquarters afterwards. I'm going over everything, and I couldn't find a report from anything inside the wallet. I could find the report that they were negative for fingerprints on the outside of the wallet.
Remember, investigators that night found some condoms, baby oil in a wallet in the front yard.
So I called down to Leighton Prince, and I says, I can't find this report. Can you look through your file and see what's there? And she called me back a very short time later. She says, oh my God, Billy. She says, it looks like they didn't process the little scraps of paper in there. What do you want me to do? Process them right now. And she did it right away. And lo and behold, on one of those little scraps of paper was one of James Witkowski's fingerprints.
James Witkowski is arrested and charged with first-degree murder.
We believe that Mr. Witkowski and his group of friends knew the comings and goings of Miss Bruce and her roommate, and the evidence suggested on that fateful weekend, perhaps Mr. Witkowski was sitting on the stairs and saw the roommate leave. He entered that apartment and found Miss Bruce. There was an opportunity to not only steal from the apartment, but horrendously and in a vicious way.
It is only his DNA found in her body. I think is very powerful. Everything was pointing very clearly that James Witkowski was both the rapist and the murderer of Lena Bruce.
But the district attorneys still face challenges in prosecuting the case.
One of the challenges in a case like this that's 20 plus years old is that we had trouble finding people who were still alive, including the medical examiner, because the medical examiner was dead, and there's a term in law that we have to authenticate the evidence. You can't just put it in because it has something on the envelope that says it's Lena Bruce's fingernails or fingernail swab. Somebody needs to authenticate it.
2 years later, the case goes to trial. The courtroom is packed with Lena's siblings, sorority sisters, and best friend, Barbara. Sadly, Lena's parents died some years before and wouldn't get to see their daughter's accused killer in court. So what was James Witkowski's defense?
Mr. Witkowski's defense in this case was consensual intercourse with Lena Bruce, and that somebody else must have killed her.
The notion that Lena Bruce, who kind of limited her social life to recent college graduates, accomplished young people who are active in the community, the notion that she would ever have a consensual sexual encounter with, someone who's, sitting around drinking alcohol and smoking pot, using cocaine or whatever he was doing, it just struck us as absurd.
In Hagen's closing argument, he describes the last tragic moments of Lena's life.
She had a horrible death to close somebody's airways to the point where they lose consciousness, that it takes a minute to do that. And it takes more than 2 minutes, ultimately, or thereabouts, to kill somebody if their airways are completely blocked. I did have the jury sit there for a minute, and I just stared at them. And I think that really, a minute is an awful long time if you think of the terror that she was going through at the time.
The case goes to the jury. Then, after 3 days of deliberations,
the jury convicted him of murder in the first degree.
James Witkowski's sentence, life with no chance of parole.
It was extremely rewarding to finally, 25 years after this, terrible crime, to bring some justice to Lena, her family, and her friends.
Rewarding and bittersweet.
Lena's mother and father went to their graves without knowing what happened to their daughter, and never got to experience this coming away with some level of justice.
What a tragedy it is that she was a superstar. She was going places. And it was taken from her in her own bed, and not a damn thing she can do about it. I mean, think of that. Oh my God. That's it.
For Barbara, the past 25 years have been incredibly hard, but she now knows the best way to honor Lena's memory.
I have a lot more peace that now we know what happened. I feel that I can start to come out of my cave now. I want to live life. I really want to live life. I want to enjoy my life, because she wouldn't want that. She wouldn't want me to be sad anymore.
One interesting note here, Witkowski may have been caught years earlier if he lived in a different state. Massachusetts is one of only 15 states where a defendant is not required to submit a DNA profile until they are convicted of a felony and sent to prison. In other states, DNA samples are required at the time of arrest, much like a fingerprint. In this case, Witkowski was arrested 7 times in the past 15 years, but never sent to prison, so he was never required to submit a DNA sample.